Welcome to Behind the Curtain, where we discuss everything from aliens and conspiracies to ancient civilizations and religions, all from a biblical perspective.
All right, Josh.
We're live.
We're live.
We're alive and we are live.
Yes.
We are live.
Oh, man. I guess the first order of business is just saying Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Happy Hanukkah and Kwanzaa to all those who celebrate all the different pagan religious holidays.
You can't call them all pagan. Yeah, we're back. It's been a minute. So,
yep.
Been busy with some, personal things, work and family and
life changes and all the things that happen. Yep.
But we managed to carve out time for this because people want to hear what we have to say.
People are,
at least that is the illusion that
people are knocking down my door.
Yeah.
Just emails. I mean, physical letters coming in.
Yep.
Where are you? Are you coming back? Are you going to talk about the Giants again?
Yeah.
And here we are. We're back.
It's weird that you send yourself letters, but whatever encourages you, man. No, we didn't get to do an end of the year episode because we were busy. So, I mean, Christmas, is it pagan? You said it. So, explain yourself. We did Halloween. We didn't get to do Christmas.
Yeah, right. I think we can just change the title of the Halloween one and put insert Christmas.
It is funny because everything
it is what it is.
I did do a little research on it as Christmas approached, just in case we had a recording. Yeah. And it is funny that I found basically the same story as Halloween. It's a Catholic thing.
Yeah. And
it has gotten appropriated and retconned and reappropriated and misappropriated and it's pagan and the Catholics stole it, and it's basically the same story as Halloween.
It is pretty similar, very, very similar.
So I just thought that was funny.
Well, Ryan, the Bible does say that pagans go out and cut down trees and bring them into their home.
Yeah.
And they decorate them with gold and silver and they worship them. And
there is that.
Of course, we all know that is the modern Christmas tree that it's speaking about.
It has to be. It can't be anything else. No, the story I heard, which I guess it all depends on what camp you're in, which story you're going to believe.
Right.
But if you're German or European, a lot of people are going to say that it's a German thing that Martin Luther started the Christmas tree, They said the story is that he was walking in the woods one evening. He sees the stars shining through the trees, and it makes him think of our awesome creator, God, and
praise God.
How beautiful things are. And so he says, let's bring the tree in the house and decorate it to remind us of how beautiful. So, but then
he's
there's
probably halfway drunk doing it too. Let's take this tree and bring it inside.
That's what's his name? The Hot Pocket.
Jim Gaffigan.
Let's
take all these things that are outside and bring them inside.
Yeah, this is the behavior of a drunk person.
Yeah.
Why is there a tree in the living room?
We decorate it for Jesus.
I like it.
I like it.
Decorate it for Jesus.
So good.
He says, we take the trees and put them inside, and we take the lights, that inside things, lights, and put them outside.
Oh, it's so great. That's a pretty good
little bit.
Just the way the comedic mind works is just genius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Christmas tree, Michael Heiser on the Naked Bible podcast, because we talk about him on every episode.
Right. We need to pray for him because he's over the holidays, his health kind of deteriorated a bit more, and he's stable and everything, but he's back in the hospital, and Yeah, the whole cancer thing is
that's sad to hear.
Sucks, but he we love you, Mike. Hope you get better.
Yeah, I mean, he comes up.
If not, you be with Jesus. So win-win.
Yeah. He comes up on every episode just because you probably feel the same way, but he's really kind of really almost a hero figure. I mean,
oh yeah,
there are things that the way that I read and study the Bible now, and things that I know that I had to have a totally different perspective to kind of get there, and he was the guy that did that, and I know he's done that for thousands of people.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, very grateful for him and his work, his ministry, if you will, the Christian word for it.
Definitely.
But yeah, hopefully all goes well for him.
Oh, yeah.
But he actually has an episode on his podcast about whether Christmas is pagan or not. And he does talk about the Christmas tree. He talks about the Norse origins of it, the Yuletide and all that.
Yule log. Yeah.
Which again, and
you'll go to hell if you.
Well, the big points. I'll just sum up that episode for you. The big points are that, once again, just like in Halloween, we can't really know the origin of some of the stories from that region because people weren't writing the stories down.
Yeah.
But Catholics, when they went to evangelize that area, they used a story about Odin to draw a parallel to Christ. That he laid down his life to give wisdom to men.
Yeah.
And on the world, they have the world tree. Yeah, the world tree. And so they use that as a parallel for Christ, that Christ hung on a tree and sacrificed himself to save humans. So that was actually something that missionaries used to evangelize that region. So it kind of goes into that same question, like in Halloween, like just because a pagan did something, does it make it pagan?
Right.
And then now does it have a different meaning now? And I think the ultimate test is just like, don't bow down and worship your Christmas tree, and you're probably fine. Like, but it doesn't sound like that's what they did.
Right? Yeah. The modern adaptation so far removed from the origins of it.
Yeah, and then the other big thing he discussed is the date that everybody says that December 25th was taken from winter solstice festivals and Sol Invictus Roman festivals and stuff. And he basically said that Christians recognize that date as the birth of Christ long before Sol Invictus and those other festivals and stuff. And the way that they got there, I thought was really interesting. They believed, the traditional belief was that Christ's death and his conception had to have been the same day. And they place his conception in March or something. I don't remember. Oh, the death of Christ. Yeah, they were trying to not birth. So that would have been 9 months later, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. He says conception, not birth. So, but we know that Easter, the approximate date of Christ's death, people were fascinated with discovering that. And so if you believe he was conceived on the same day by the Holy Spirit, then 9 months later is when he was born, and that would have got you to like September or something.
Yeah, they actually say September,
or actually to December. 11th. Yeah. So they December, depending on what calendar you're using, that got certain groups of people put it on December 25th, and so it was recognized by the church, by Christian groups long before Sol Invictus and the other one I can't remember the name of right now. Saturnalia, I think, is the other one.
I actually I think I mentioned this to you this week about studying how the wise men found Jesus through astrology, and bro, that's a crazy story.
Yeah, dude.
And how the signs of the zodiac, or the Mazaroth, however you say it, like with the Virgin constellation, and then the sun above her head, or she's closed in the sun, and it has the King Lion, Leo, above her head, and the moon at her feet, and all that, and it all lined up, and like so there was something about like this period of time when all of this would have lined up perfectly, supposedly when Jesus was born.
Yeah,
they say around September 11th, which is interesting.
Right. And the reason they get that date and the year, the approximate year as well, is by who was ruling, because the Bible, like the Gospel of Luke, for instance, he talks about some of the people who were in leadership roles, like in the Jewish community and in Rome. And so you can historically place it like on the calendar. It really he names real people.
Yeah.
That history recognizes. So
they even have a thing where Heiser talks about this too, but even like a time span of like a couple of hours when the star would have been visible, the highest in the sky, and all this stuff like goes into it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the language of the wise men is interesting too, because they say something along the lines of, "We saw his star as it arose." So like, it was something specific that they saw that they were like, "This is unique."
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Did I tell you about like how they thought the wise men would have like come to the conclusion to follow? Like,
I think you did, but for the sake of our
the astrological signs, like a lot of scholars, they don't know for sure, but they theorize that these wise men would have been handed down information from the time of Daniel in Babylon.
Yeah. So
Daniel was captured and taken to Babylon and was assimilated into Babylonian culture, and him and his buddies they had all their names changed from like Daniel to Belshazzar and all this stuff, and he of course we know the story of him interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream,
right?
But when you read the account, Nebuchadnezzar calls all of his sorcerers and magicians and wise men and sages and all this stuff, and they were astrologers, and he was like basically like, okay, tell me what my dream meant, because he had this dream in the middle of the night, and they're like, well, tell us the dream and we'll interpret it for you. And he's like, no. He's like, you're going to tell me what the dream is and the interpretation of it. And they're like, we can't do that. Just tell us the dream first. And he was like threatening to kill all of them. He's like, if you don't do it, I'm going to kill all of you. And Daniel got wind of this, and he was like, he asked God, he was like, God, help me, give me the interpretation of this so I can spare these people's lives and things will go good for us. And God gave him the interpretation. So he goes to Nebuchadnezzar, tells him the dream, tells him the interpretation. Nebuchadnezzar's like, holy crap, your God is real. And pretty much sets him up as the head of all of the wise men, or the sages, the magicians and sorcerers.
Yep.
So there's this theory where Daniel would have taught the wise men in Babylon, the ways of God. And they would have handed that down through generations to the wise men searching the skies, where the Bible talks about in Genesis that God made the heavens to declare the glory of God for times and seasons of things and events. And they did that literally, and it led them right to Jesus.
Yeah. How about that? That's crazy.
It's wild, bro. It's wild.
Well, kind of as a segue to what we're going to talk about the rest of the day.
Not the writing segue.
Yeah. Which we learned how to spell recently.
Oh my God. When you spelled that, I was like, there's no way I would have got.
I think the segue that you ride is spelled with a W.
That's what I was thinking. Like,
yeah.
SEGY.
GUE.
Yeah.
But the wise men, depending on what translation you read, are called magi.
Right.
Which means they practice magic.
It comes from magic, yeah.
Yeah. They were magicians.
Where you get the word magic.
And so there's different connotations and explanations for that. But something that we're going to discuss today is some occult origins, some Western esotericism. It's a big word for some of y'all. Just means mysterious and unknown things.
Hidden things, yep.
But y'all know, I mean, if you've been with us from the beginning, you know that, we're interested in kind of the apologetic side of the weird things. And so we said right off the bat that we were going to be tackling, New Age and the occult, and even like, this is going to shock some people, but people who call themselves progressive Christians. It's all the same message that's just been rebranded and repackaged.
Yep.
And the origins of it can be traced back to a handful of people.
Yeah.
One of them is Aleister Crowley.
Bro.
And Josh has been wanting to talk about Aleister Crowley since before we started this podcast, so he's finally going to get his chance today.
Yeah, we'll discuss a little bit of it. Yeah, it's a lot.
What brought this on is a month or so ago was the Balenciaga ads that everybody got heated about.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I like to call it Pizzagate Part 2.
Pizzagate Part 2.
Yeah.
It's funny how something like that happens, and it's like everybody chooses a side real fast, and it's easy to know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, right?
Yep, that's for sure.
And it really, if you weren't, I know people who are not, I don't think would consider themselves conspiracy theorists, but they jumped on the bandwagon real fast when it comes to celebrities and politicians and stuff.
Yeah,
I think everybody kind of knows there's some sketchy stuff going on behind the scenes.
Sure, yeah.
And
I don't think they have it on their radar as far as like what's really going on though, like sorcery and magic and Satanism and all this stuff.
Yeah,
I think they have an inkling. You know, it's almost like their spiritual radar is like, okay, something's off.
Yeah.
But, maybe they're just shysty people, shysters, and all they care about is money or something,
Yeah. Well, in case you live somewhere without internet access or you live under a rock or something, the Balenciaga is a high fashion company. That it's associated
you want to
with.
Call it that, I guess.
Fashion is something I've never understood.
Holy crap!
I do good if I wear like brown shoes with a brown belt. Like, if I can get brown tones to match, then I'm doing good.
I don't think these people know anything about fashion.
Don't mix black and brown.
I think it's a big front.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. So they had an ad campaign. Again, in case you haven't heard, here's the backstory. So Balenciaga is this huge clothing brand that's associated with the rich elites, like Hollywood celebrities and these people that own these huge businesses and whatever, politicians and different people. Like Balenciaga is this big deal. And they had an ad campaign recently that several photos got people very upset. It featured a girl she was holding a stuffed teddy bear.
A child.
Yeah, a child, probably
like 6 years old,
7, something like that.
5 or 6 years old.
Young girl, well, holding a teddy bear that was dressed with some sexual paraphernalia, and some of the things kind of scattered around the room were adult themed. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And then there's some shots that are like close-up shots that have documents in them, like laid out on a desk. And one of the documents was a court case about a pedophilia. Anyway,
child pornography. Yeah,
that's what it was. Yeah. So, again, without going into, if you want to research it more, if you want to see the photos this is what bothers me is everybody got mad about the photos, but then everybody who complains about it or writes a news article or whatever are sharing the photos.
Yeah.
So it hasn't killed it. If anything, it's spreads awareness, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even know who Balenciaga was until this happened. So
yeah,
that's one of those things where you go like, did they know exactly what they were doing and they built some awareness now? Like, but it's not like I would ever go purchase anything from them, especially after that. But that's not my style,
Well, this is a company that's, they cater to the elite of society. Nobody's going to go buy a whole stained T-shirt for $500,
right?
Unless you just have money to throw away. And I mean, Kanye West was one of their, artists that collaborated with them. Not anymore. Kim Kardashian, Madonna. A lot of big celebrities are connected to this brand. Adidas is connected to Balenciaga, and they collaborate together. to have these photos, you know, of children with sexual themes and, you know, blatant things that are just like, okay, yeah, that's right there, right in the open.
Yeah.
And people have even like, you know, so when the whole thing broke, you know, you have all the 4chan guys that get on there and they're like, they scan every single inch of the photos and find things here and there that are like, that people didn't see right away. But yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah. So there's a couple different flavors of this conspiracy theory. So like, for instance, the first thing is deciding who's
well, it's really a conspiracy fact now.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
what I mean is you have to decide. There's a few questions because people will just run off with theories, and I enjoy conspiracy theory. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I will entertain something because it's entertaining, even if I don't think it's real. You know, it's like I've said before. Like I try to live in a world in my mind where like both can be true, right? And so this is one of those where I go, maybe this is all just conspiracy, but if it's true, let's ask these critical thinking questions. Let's do these exercises, right? You have to decide who's at fault. Like who it, if it was done intentionally and strategically, who is the mind behind it?
Yeah.
Then the question is, what is the purpose? And so like from a marketing standpoint, maybe they knew there'd be backlash, but they know that this kind of thing gets attention. Yeah. And like I said, I'd never even heard of them before. And so now that builds brand awareness, but it's not something that you want to be associated with, right?
Yeah. I don't, yeah. I can see, I'm like, I know the whole phrase of like, you know, any publicity is good publicity, but
exactly.
But this, I don't see how it's positive in any way for them.
Well, and all the people who were involved have come out and apologized and basically said like, we're even going to take the extra step to like help organizations that, you know, rescue kids from child abuse and stuff. Like they're like, oh, we just have to learn more and support them and stuff because they're trying to patch the situation up, you know.
It's damage control.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, so that would be the first question. And that's just a purely objective, like nothing spiritual, nothing like that's just somebody having the balls to make something that's really inappropriate and just say like, we're going to take heat for this, but people are going to know our name now. Right.
Well, it's funny because like, it's interesting how little things like this catch fire and people notice. Like this kind of stuff has been going on for a long time in the fashion industry, the entertainment industry, and Hollywood, and all like forms of like this stuff goes on all the time. Like art. Yeah. Art is not art anymore. It's a front for do what you want, especially performance art, you know. But like, I mean, this stuff's been around for forever. But it's just funny how like one little thing can catch fire, and I mean, it's good.
But see, knowing that, so that kind of goes into what I would say flavor number 2 is of this situation, which would be maybe they knew it was inappropriate. They knew exactly the message it was sending.
Yeah, definitely.
And they are trying to push the envelope. You know, like people are saying like, oh, how they're so shameless in their wickedness. And it's like, oh yeah, but that is what the elites and what Hollywood and media, that's what they do consistently. Like think about TV 30 years ago. You didn't have shows about pregnant teenagers and homosexuality and trans and, you know, like all this stuff.
It's a cultural grooming is what it is. How far can we go? And when we get too far, we'll pull back a little bit and wait. Yeah. And then we'll go back in again and go back in again. Yeah. And it's just so in 5 years and 10 years, 15 years, whatever, there could be more ads like this, and it won't be as much of a shock, right? Nobody will care.
And so that's kind of the second step in this conspiracy is like, it's not just a marketing thing. Were they trying to intentionally reveal their culture, right? And say like, hey, we support this wickedness, right? They wouldn't say it like that, but go with me here. They say like, hey, we're cool with this culture and the rest of y'all aren't there yet, but we're just showing you we're going to push it just a little bit. Right.
Yeah.
And they're a big company with tons of money. So there's not going to be any real consequences. They're going to buy their way out of it. They're going to press release and Twitter release, whatever to get out of it. There's not going to be any real consequences for them. All they have to do is remove the media and then try again in a few years.
The thing, not even a few years, like with social media and everything, like Dave Chappelle talks about, like we weren't meant to like have all of this information so quickly and so readily available, or like our brains are not capable of. And so within a month or two, the next scandal will happen to somebody else and everybody will forget, like we still don't have the client list from Epstein. Nobody even like, wait, who? Epstein? Who's that?
Perfect example of what you're saying, though. Gucci, I hadn't heard about this until I was researching this topic. Gucci just had an ad or a photo shoot that they did for ads featuring Harry Styles. And he is modeling men's clothing from Gucci, and he's carrying around a child's mattress. Like one of those like toddler mattresses.
Wait, I gotta find this.
Yeah. And his shirt has like a stuffed bear on it.
Yep.
And so people are upset about that now. It's not as big as Balenciaga.
Right.
I don't think it's as well known, but there are people that notice that and are saying like, why do you have an adult man that is a celebrity walking around with a toddler mattress with a teddy bear on his shirt, right?
Right.
Like that's weird.
Yeah,
it's inappropriate.
I'm looking at it now.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm trying to see what the shirt says. It's got like a pink teddy bear on it, and it says something above it, but I can't see.
With the way, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but he's wearing like a shirt over it. It's covering the rest of the shirt, but the bear's right in the middle where you can see it. But see, because of the backlash for the Balenciaga thing, I feel like this has been relatively unnoticed.
Yeah.
So it's already happening right in front of us, Like this isn't nearly as explicit as what Balenciaga did, but it's still weird.
Yep.
So,
well, you would think, with the whole Balenciaga thing, that every single company would have been like, okay, let's make sure we do not put anything out there that has anything to do with kids or even like kids fashion lines are like, look, we're just going to show the clothes, no kids in them. Okay.
Yeah. Not having kids in the pictures.
Just take a picture of the empty shirt. We're not dealing with that. But then you got this stuff popping up. I mean, what's the point of, like, there is no point of him having, it looks like a little kid's mattress, like for a bed.
Yeah.
Like, what does that have to do with anything? All right, so I'm looking at his T-shirt in this ad or whatever, and it's saying that, I had it. It's saying that it's the shirt that he's wearing has a pink bear. The bear looks like he's kind of mad. He's like got his arms crossed, and above it says, "I want more berries." Supposedly, that's a lyric from his Watermelon Sugar song.
Yeah,
I don't know any of that.
That song is about. I'm pretty sure it's about sex.
It's about watermelon.
It's about something that he should not be associating with a child's mattress.
He likes watermelon, and it's sugary. We all know it's about watermelons.
No, it's about watermelons.
It's about melons, all right.
Anyway, my point is, you see how there's kind of this slippery slope in media.
I just want to add that the coat and pants that he's wearing are hideous.
Yeah, how does this pass as fashion?
Anything passes as well. I mean, all the Balenciaga stuff, like when you can go on YouTube and watch their like fashion shows. It's basically gimp wear. If you don't know what gimp wear is, try to search it, I guess. Just be careful. But it's the same stuff as the teddy bears, it's this torture-esque sexual connotation wear, leather straps and spikes, and they have these like rubber masks that cover their whole face, and it's just weird. It's
yeah,
evil.
Man, it's weird. It's inappropriate. Shouldn't be associated with child anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people call it on the child's mattress thing, and we're like, why are we associating that? But see how that's not getting. I have not heard about it until I was researching this.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a perfect example of you got Balenciaga going out there and doing something and taking all the heat,
right?
And then, but then it's going to come in slowly,
Well, that's what,
it.
like what I was saying a minute ago. Like, this stuff has been happening for a long time, and just it flies under the radar because nobody cares or nobody notices, and the people who do notice are probably just all the people involved. And because I mean, like I said before, like these companies are geared toward the elite. They're not thinking about the average person. The guy, with an average income. They're not going to go and buy $5,000 shoes.
Yeah.
So they're even their ad campaigns and all that are thrown toward the rich and the powerful. And so when the rich and powerful see it, they probably know exactly what it is. They're like, oh, I'm going to go over there.
Well, and that kind of brings me to what I would call my third flavor or third stage in this Balenciaga conspiracy, is that it's ritualistic in nature.
Oh, yeah.
That when something like this is done in public view, the attention is what gives it power.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of occultic that goes into the occult, which I feel like you're going to cover in just a second, about like things being done in the public eye, but also with children. That is a common theme that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah.
And
well,
it gets weird.
It's signaling.
Yeah.
When you're in a club, it's kind of funny to like, if you're in something that like, it's kind of like inside jokes. Like inside jokes, if you're in on it, then it's hilarious. It's fun. But if you're not in on it, you just think it's weird, So
that's how I feel about this. Is a little bit of a tangent, but this is something I've been thinking. It's been stewing for a minute.
Yep.
I'm going to put some time into researching this one day.
All right.
But Kamala Harris, have you ever heard her give a speech? How
if you want to call it a speech, I don't know.
People ridicule her all the time for it sounding ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you don't keep sounding ridiculous. I'm convinced it's code. She is talking to somebody about something.
Probably.
Now, she's had several speech writers quit or get fired, I think. So I don't know what their game is, but I just think you can't keep that up for that long and not change your game. So it has to be intentional. I'm convinced she is communicating code to somebody.
Yeah, definitely could be.
But like you said, if you're in a group and you have this little inside knowledge, inside joke, whatever, it's like, if you know,
Yeah.
And so they don't care who sees it.
Right. It's fun. It's a game. It's a way to feel powerful, that I know something that they don't. And look, we're flaunting it and they don't even know what the heck is going on. It's a power trip. Even the coded language, like you were saying, like all of that went into Pizzagate. That's how Pizzagate was found out. The WikiLeaks emails and John Podesta and Hillary Clinton emails, like the whole coded language is just there. It's evident because when you read it in context, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Hey, I have a map. I have a map at my house that's pizza related. Is this yours? Like, that makes no sense. A map that's pizza related. Did you leave it at my house? Like, hey, we're going to order $50,000 worth of hot dogs to the White House. It's like, what? Like, what? That makes no sense at all.
And then not just language. So I'm going to give you a slow pitch here. Let you just go off on this. But the one eye thing, like not just language, but in like symbolism and imagery.
Oh, God,
celebrities covering their eyes what is it? Is it their left eye or their right eye?
The left eye.
Yeah. They all do it. Like,
oh yeah,
you can find these big collages of all these celebrities who are not directly related.
The Star Wars, the Star Wars sequel trilogy did it for the Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
They had Han Solo with his blaster like this, and then they had Rey with her staff like this over her eye.
And that was all Disney, by the way.
Oh yeah, Disney.
It was after Disney took over.
Yeah, the mark of the mouse.
But yeah, that is a, I don't know if you want to call it a cult symbol or if it's just an insider elite thing to show that they're part of this secret society.
I've heard that the whole left eye thing is like the Eye of Horus or something like that. And,
sure.
I mean, I've heard different things.
Yeah, but it's more than a coincidence, dude. It's
definitely out there for sure. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Aleister Crowley, if you want to segue to him now, like he did a lot of this stuff and made a lot of it popular in Western culture.
Well, I'll say this is why it's the perfect opportunity to introduce him as a topic because of his influence on mainstream culture around the world.
Yep.
But especially in America, because he at one point during his life, he was considered this wild, crazy eccentric and was kind of kicked out of his circle, and he came to America and started his movement over here. So, but yeah, I don't know, Josh, do you want to handle that? Do you want to start talking about?
That's the thing. It's like, it's a lot. Like he influenced directly and indirectly so many people and so many things. Like,
well, can you give us in a nutshell, like maybe let's say we got like 30 minutes left. So like, what did he believe and who is he connected to? What groups or individuals, just in like a broad stroke, you know?
Right. All right. So Aleister Crowley, his real name is Edward. It was Edward Crowley.
Of course.
British. He was raised, this is interesting, like how it went bad for him. He was raised Christian. His parents were of the Plymouth Brethren movement. This came off the heels of some of those revivals in Europe. I want to say Charles Finney, but I'm not sure. But the Plymouth Brethren were they were an ascetic group, which is like no pleasure, no indulgence of any kind. Like if it feels good, don't do it. They didn't celebrate. Sin. Right. Everything was sin. If it brings pleasure, then it's probably not good. Like they didn't celebrate Christmas. They didn't give gifts to you, like none of that stuff. And so,
well, and then the biggest thing would be like, what do you call it? Like drugs and alcohol and
oh yeah, definitely.
That would be the sex, like stuff like that. Anything that gives pleasure, anything you can indulge in, they were supposed to avoid, right? Yeah.
Asceticism is that belief. Yeah. If it feels good, it's probably a sin. Don't do it.
Well, that's like, this is not directly related, but like, Mormons kind of do that too, or Latter-day Saints. Like they won't even drink coffee or anything.
Yeah, no sugar, no caffeine. Yeah, none of that. Yeah. So that was the environment that he was raised in, and he was down with it. I mean, as a kid, you don't really know anything else other than what your parents tell you. But I think from all the stuff I've gathered, like once he started going to school, and he started to see other kids and like them outside playing games, and like he was not allowed to participate in that. And he was made fun of a lot because of his upbringing. And, he wasn't allowed to read certain books without his parents' permission and all that, like all this stuff. Like he was just hindered from doing so much that people just were like, the guy's a weirdo, so he got made fun of a lot. Yeah. His family was actually rich because their family owned a brewery or a line of
ironic.
Yeah, it's funny, but they didn't take the money.
It would have been his grandfather's brewery,
right? Well, they didn't take. They wouldn't indulge in that money because it was alcohol, and it was evil.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but his dad passed away. He had tongue cancer, and he passed away, and that's when the tides in his life kind of turned. So from what I gathered, I've researched a bunch of different documentaries and read a bunch of different stuff, and from what I've gathered, he loved his dad. He wanted to be like his dad. He actually wanted to be a preacher. But then, when he got older, the whole like adolescent years and teenage years, he started to question a lot of that stuff. He started to question the Bible. He started to supposedly point out inconsistencies in the Bible because he had to read the Bible all the time. He said that he enjoyed reading Revelation with all the crazy,
it's weird,
right? Because all the crazy stuff in it. So he really gravitated toward that. But I think the big change, during him questioning all this stuff, he started to get sick a lot. Supposedly living with his mother by themselves. I don't know, just the home was not fit, or it was, I don't know the whole situation, but he got sick a lot. And so his health was deteriorating. And so she sent him away to go live with his uncle. His uncle was not religious. And taking him to the doctor and all this stuff, they're like, he needs to get out, like get fresh air and stuff like that. So his uncle takes him out. They go fishing, they go mountain climbing and all this stuff. Well, he introduces him. He's about 15 years old at this time. He introduces him to alcohol. He introduces him to gambling and prostitutes. He loses his virginity at 15 years old. So living with his uncle gave him freedom to a fault. But him experiencing that freedom, he was like, oh my gosh, like everything, Christianity and my family and all these people told me like not to do, this is all I want to do. He's like, I have so much freedom and I can do whatever I want. And this feels great. And so when he came back home, it was rough because his mom was like, his mom literally started calling him the beast. From different biographies that I read, like some said that she called him the beast, just being like almost mocking him in a way, like calling him the beast of Revelation. And then some were saying like she actually thought he was the actual beast of Revelation. And Crowley thought it was funny. He thought it was hilarious. And so he kept the moniker and he kept the nickname as like, oh, okay, I'm the beast, 666 or whatever. And it kind of stuck with him for a long time. But so I think that's where the big shift was. So it's interesting that he was raised to believe in Jesus and read the Bible, but it was so religious and it was so against really what the gospel is,
It makes me think of what we talked about with like Adam and Eve, that they were commanded, you can eat of any fruit in the garden, but not from this particular tree.
Yeah.
And we discussed it when we talked about Genesis 3, that the serpent said, did God really say you can't eat of any of these trees? And Eve said, no, we can eat from the trees. We just can't we can't even touch that one.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, you won't die. And it says that she thought it was desirable and beautiful and whatever. And she touched, so it, like, and a lot of people speculate about that she thought like, oh, touching it isn't going to kill me. Oh, look how nice it is.
Yeah.
Or with what we said, that maybe Lucifer was tempting her with it, that he might have even been eating it.
He was probably the guardian of the garden.
Him. Yeah. Yeah. It's not killing him. Look how great he is. I'll be like the gods if I eat this. So, So I really think Aleister Crowley, when you go from one extreme of like no pleasure at all to his uncle going, basically, this kid only has like a year left to live. Like I want him to be happy.
Right.
And he like gives him prostitutes and drugs and alcohol and whatever. Right. And then he gets better and he doesn't die. And now he's like,
exactly. Yeah.
Well, I've done all the bad things and I'm still living, So like, what do you, what, as a kid, as a teenager, what do you expect to happen?
Mm.
He's like, "Oh, I ate the fruit and I didn't die." Woo woo,
Yep.
you know. So
Jeez. Yep.
that's how I see it.
Yeah,
But
that's exactly right. Yeah,
but
and of course, yeah.
he basically he went from one extreme to the other and adopted that mentality that like pleasure is the highest goal, right? Like
Yeah, hedonism.
what's it called? Hedonism. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you said?
Yeah, hedonism.
Yeah. It's that seeking pleasure and fulfilling pleasure is the purpose of life, you know.
Yeah.
And he, even when he started his movement, it was do what thou wilt, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's not to give any spoilers if you have more biographical information to give.
I mean, there's a lot, but I'll kind of skip ahead to like his young 20s.
Yeah.
He finally inherited all the money from his family, from the brewery and all that stuff. So he inherited this big sum of money, and that gave him the license to go and do whatever he wanted, literally. So he started traveling the world. He started from his uncle. He started, the mountain climbing thing. That was the thing that he loved, and he was like, "I'm going to devote my life to three things," and it was mountain climbing, poetry, and the last one was like spiritual enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
He had I think it was in 1918. He had this episode where he was sleeping, but he was awake at the same time, almost like astral projection, kind of. And it said that it scared him. Like he was like, I was sleeping, but I was awake, and I could see things and hear things. And he's like, it freaked me out, but at the same time, it was like, oh, it kind of awoken in him, like, oh, there is like spiritual stuff out there. Like, I want to find out what it is. And that kind of set him on his path to like the occult. And let's see, he met this guy. I'm trying to find his name here. So he met a guy
Darth
named yeah.
I made that joke too early. Just forget I said that.
It's too early. We'll come back to it. We'll circle back. Crowley started a friendship with this guy named Gerald Kelly, and that's actually how he met his wife. This guy's sister was Rose Kelly, and that was his first wife that he married. That's the one that went with him to Egypt, and they did all the rituals in Egypt and stuff, was Rose Kelly. But it's interesting that this guy, Gerald Kelly, kind of became his buddy and kind of confidant, and they would bounce ideas off of each other. And Crowley was wanting to write poetry, so he would send Gerald this poetry to like review. And Gerald was an artist, a painter. He later became the certified royal painter for the royal family. So Aleister was like one person away from the whole royal family. And actually, yeah. So he married that guy's sister, Rose. They ended up, I don't think we talked about this before, but like going to Egypt and talking to this, she heard voices of a being, and they said his name was Aiwass, and Aiwass dictated the book of the law to Aleister through Rose.
Yeah. So my understanding of that is just what you said. So when they got married, what we've mentioned before in previous episodes is that they went to Egypt on their honeymoon they were trying to communicate with the Egyptian gods, specifically Horus. Yeah. And they did a ritual, and she fainted and claimed that Horus spoke to her.
Right. Yeah.
And then she had the other encounter with Lamb, and she described it and he drew it. That's the one that looks like the alien.
Yeah, Lamb was earlier, before Aiwass.
Yeah. So Aiwass,
Lamb was something that he saw, like physically, he said.
Okay.
And that's how he drew it. And it looks exactly like the alien grays that we see now in modern day.
Right. So these are entities or spirits that he's communicating with.
Right.
And Aiwass, the way that I heard it explained was that he called him Aleister Crowley called him his guardian angel.
Guardian angel, yeah.
That he specifically communicated with this one, and he's the one that kind of led him
right
into that. So
yeah, so in between all this time before he got married and all that stuff, he got introduced to a guy named George Cecil Jones. George Jones. Jones was a chemist. So all of this stuff, it's almost like modern day networking. He's networking with all of these people because he wants to be a poet. He's an artist. He's a poet. He's a free thinker. And so he's mingling with all of these people. And at that time, drugs were not illegal. Opium and heroin and all that stuff, like that was just wide open. He actually had a bad case of asthma from his ailments as a kid, and his doctor prescribed him heroin.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was addicted to heroin. He was addicted to a bunch of stuff later. But so all of these like drugs that we think of like being illegal now, like that was wide open back then. Like
but it wasn't. It's not like everybody was doing it.
No, not everybody. It was the high aristocratic elite people that had access and money to this stuff.
Because now he's rich and he has no boundaries and no filters.
Exactly. So he's mingling with he's rubbing shoulders with the elite of society.
Yeah.
He meets this guy named George Cecil Jones. Jones was a chemist, so he was very like into like the drugs and the chemicals and all that stuff. But he was also, when it says when they became good friends, that George came to him and was like, "Hey, I'm a part of this. I'm a member of this secret club, and I want to tell you this now. I'm a part of this magic society called the Golden Dawn. Now, there's one called it's called the Golden Dawn, and it's also called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Same thing.
Yeah.
But it was,
and that's the one that Darth Maul runs.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, for our listeners in Star Wars, Darth Maul runs the Crimson Dawn.
The Crimson Dawn. Yes.
So, totally
Hopefully they'll bring him back in some movies. So the Golden Dawn it was literally this magical order of people that were all like aristocratic elite people.
Yeah.
And they were focusing on the practice of theurgy. So theurgy, which I'd never heard that before, but it's described as a practice of doing rituals that are magical in nature, performed with the intention of invoking certain deities, especially with the goal of achieving henosis, which we've heard that before. Henosis is like uniting yourself. It's the same word for yoga. Yoga means to yoke yourself.
To bind yourself.
Yep. Yeah. To bind yourself with the deity. So henosis, through this magic performing of rituals, was to bind yourself to different spirits and become enlightened that way, because they would speak to you or show you things or what have you. This is interesting. The Golden Dawn. So he tells Aleister this, and Aleister's like, "Whoa, crap! All right, yeah, that sounds cool." Because he's already on this spiritual journey and trying to figure out, enlightenment and all this stuff. And so Jones is like, "I'm a part of this order. You should come and join. I'll vouch for you." They were meeting in the Mark Mason's Hall, which was the Messianic Center in London. So they were connected to the Freemasons and used their centers for certain ceremonies. They named some of the ceremonies, but I didn't have time to look into what all the ceremonies were. But Crowley gets in. So Jones vouches for him. He gets in. Of course, you're going to start off on this low level. But he said that it was a star-studded cast of members. One of them, he's like actors, actresses, poets, writers, artists, it's like Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
All of Hollywood is in this, and they're all doing magic and they're all doing rituals together. A lot of it involves sexual activity. But I thought this was funny. There was two names that came up that I was like, holy crap. One of them was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He was the writer of Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, he was.
So he was involved in this. Also, it wasn't confirmed that he was a member, but he was highly involved with them and other members. But Bram Stoker, so the writer of Dracula.
Yeah,
Go figure, So pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, Sherlock Holmes did a lot of drugs and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of opium and stuff, right? Yeah. Well, he believed that it was like he could become clairvoyant.
Yeah.
Under the drugs, and he could find whatever he was looking for.
This is interesting too, because again, it's not like everybody was just doing drugs at that time because it wasn't illegal, but
right.
It seems like one of the things that like Aleister Crowley, even among them, was considered eccentric because he used drugs when he practiced things, because he thought that it opened him up to enlightenment. And stuff. So I think that he even experienced some rejection. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but over that
he did. There's 3 levels in the Golden Dawn, almost like 3 degrees. So he quickly, when he became a member, it says that he quickly rose in the ranks. He jumped from the first degree, and he was going into the second degree. But the guy that was over it, kind of like the head guy, I don't know what they called him, but his name was Samuel Mathers, and he was very wary of Crowley. I think because of that stuff, because he was always with prostitutes, always doing drugs, always Crowley's life, dude. When you read his biographies, I mean, it's one thing to another. He's on mountain expeditions, shooting guns at people, he's just wild stuff. It's just one event to the other.
Because he's rich and crazy. I mean,
he's just rich. He has no limits. He's doing drugs.
And that's the thing that when I was reading about it, I was like, it's crazy that he just did all this and that people listened to him and he did whatever he wanted. Well, but he really had nobody keeping him in check because he had no moral standard internally, and he was filthy rich.
Right. So, he had no limitations.
Yeah.
The thing that befuddles me is how he got so many people to come and do things with him. He was so wild. I don't know how it almost like Dracula, how Dracula puts people under a spell, and they're drawn to him and all this. It's almost like that. It's like, what in the world was drawing people to this guy that was just insane?
And something that's...
It's like, hey, you want to come over and do drugs and conjure demons with me? And they're like, yeah.
Yeah. I need help in this ritual. Let me explain.
Well, that's the thing. He needed a woman. He always had to have a woman that was his Scarlet Woman. That was the title that he had to have within certain rituals. He had to have a woman to basically have sex with.
Right.
And all the while he's experimenting with sex as well. Not just women, he's getting into men and he's having sexual relationships with men. And, but anyway, so the Golden Dawn was really where he started to excel in occultism and stuff. So the guy that was over it, the head guy, Samuel Mathers, he translated a script or a text called the Book of Abramelin. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so the gist of it is it's not an ancient writing, but it's it's based off of an ancient writing or something like that. It was this Jewish guy named Abraham who traveled to Egypt and talked to a magician in Egypt named Abramelin, who taught him these different rituals for conjuring certain deities. And so the whole book supposedly is written to, it's almost like a library of like things that you want, and then it will give you the demon or the entity or the spirit that's connected to that desire, and then you can conjure it to come and do that thing.
I have so many thoughts on that I'll just have to save for later, I think.
Wait, what?
I was saying I have a lot of thoughts about that there. That sounds, I can think of other religions and groups that have similar practices.
Yeah. There's a few. So the way, it's weird. Like I was studying and it's just so weird. Like you can read the teaching of it, and it's, you conjure these spirits through what they call magic squares. Now, this is something that's in mathematics. If you look at mathematics, there's things called magic squares where the numbers, they add up, up and down and diagonally and all that, and they all add up to the same sum or whatever. I don't know. You have to go and look it up. It's pretty interesting. But these magic squares, you would have to arrange them in a certain way and interpret them in a certain way that it would conjure this spirit, and then you could harness that spirit to go and do whatever it is you wanted it to do.
And that's how the Rubik's Cube was invented. We're all summoning demons.
Probably so, yeah. Check this out. This is some of the stuff
kidding, guys. That's not true.
But it was really connected to like mathematics and stuff. They had this whole idea that like math was like this spiritual connection to the gods, and but some of the things that you could ask for. This was a list of some of the things. I just pulled out a few. Walking on water. So there was a ritual that you could summon to walk on water and to stay underwater, like for long periods of time. Another one was flying in the air. That was another ritual that you could do. And this was like to gain this ability. This spirit would give you this ability. This was interesting. Shape-shifting. And it listed certain animals. There was only certain animals that you could shape-shift into. One was like
Bigfoot.
You could, dude, that would be so funny, man. Especially with all his mountain expeditions, like shape-shifting into the Yeti.
Yep.
But like one was like you could turn yourself into an animal, or you could turn someone else into an animal. And it was like an elephant, which is kind of funny, a donkey, a wolf, specifically a wolf. There's like only like 4 or 5 animals that it names. I don't know if it's like that's the only ones they could do, or if it's just like here's just a brief list.
That's nuts, though.
But a wolf.
That's nuts because that sounds like
that's lycanthropy.
Like the what's it called? Yes, werewolves.
Yeah, werewolves, exactly.
And it seems like Hinduism and like Native American religions have similar things too.
They do have,
like I know Native Americans have that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The what's it called? Not skinwalkers. There's another name for it. It is skinwalkers, but
yeah, they would shift to wolves, and yeah, definitely.
Yep.
A couple more here that are interesting because it ties into something from him. Raising the dead. So there were these certain things that you could conjure to bring somebody back to life. And then this one specifically, invisibility. So there was a spell that you could cast that would make you invisible to people. Crowley claimed that he did this and it worked. So he claimed that it took a while. He said that he had to keep casting this or keep doing this ritual because he wanted to be invisible. He said that and this is all from his diaries, so, take it for whatever it is. He claimed that it took a while, but he said every time that he would do the ritual, he would look in the mirror and he could see his self fading, like more and more.
Interesting.
The more he did it to where he was completely invisible. So that's pretty interesting. So you have, and this is just the 30 minutes we've been talking. We got a guy that he was doing stuff with that was connected to the royal family. He marries that guy's sister, talks to demons in Egypt.
Yeah. He's connected to all these famous authors and poets and
he starts the
musicians, businessmen.
The gray alien movement. He saw gray aliens before anybody else, it seems, and drew a picture of them. Bram Stoker, the dude that wrote Sherlock Holmes.
I want to say the only name that I can think of is Walt Whitman, but I know it wasn't him. There was a famous poet that was in that group too.
Oh, Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde was another one. And he was kind of in the group and around all those people because he was a homosexual as well. And Crowley was very wild with that stuff, but at the same time, it's kind of funny that all these drugs were legal, but homosexuality was not. So it was against the law; you could get arrested. And so
it seems like in his story, one of his first romances was with a man, and it was kind of on the DL, like when he was in college. Yeah. And it seems like when he started getting into the weird spiritual stuff, they broke up. And a lot of people think that he kind of went crazy after that.
He actually said that his first homosexual encounter was where he was connected to a spirit. Oh. He said that he like connected with an unembodied spirit.
Weird.
That was a lot of his connection of like, okay, sexual stuff and spiritual stuff connect. And when he starts Thelema, later on, it's his whole idea is sex is a ritual that opens up doorways and opens up spiritual stuff.
But that's not even that far of a leap as a Christian. I mean, what we believe biblically, and if you believe in like soul ties and stuff, I mean, the Bible talks about joining the body of Christ to a prostitute, and like he says, maybe not. I don't want people to misunderstand what I just said. That when Paul says, "Don't you realize when you join yourself with a prostitute, you become one flesh with her?" And he's not just talking about your body. He's saying if you're part of the body of Christ, you're defiling Christ's body. That's why they were excommunicated for stuff like that. So,
so think about in our culture now. I mean, it's been around for forever, but just jumping from one partner to the next.
Yep.
Just no regard for it at all. It's just it's a bodily function. It's not anything deeper than that. And
the homosexuality, some of the deviant, the experimentation, experiences with children, and that kind of brings us back to the Balenciaga thing that we started out with, because we, of course, you don't have to be a Christian to think we should protect children. Like that's the right thing to do.
Right.
But we believe that there is something spiritual behind it. And
you think about, okay, why are all these elites that are connected to magic and sorcery and demonology and
which we haven't explained yet? Why don't you take a minute and just say Aleister Crowley's kind of the ripples, his influence. Because we want to make that connection,
with Thelema,
spend 40 minutes discussing him.
Yeah. And we got to shape-shifting and invisibility. But, dude, there's a whole Harry Potter narrative that him and this guy Mathers got into a sorcery fight, and they were casting spells at each other. Dude, I'm serious. It's nice. Wild. But, I got about halfway through his life. But the cult of Thelema, which he started, was centered around sex. He called it sex magic. And it was the idea that sexual activity opens doorways and portals to the spirit realm. And
and that's the one that he said that the entire law is do what you want, basically.
Do what thou wilt. Do what thou wilt. All the law, and the book of the law was what it's from. But that's the one that was dictated to him from Iowas. But the book talks about, of course, all kinds of sexual stuff. but it also talks about blood, like using blood. Uh, and this is where it kind of connects to kids. It's like some of the rituals that are in the book of the law are you got to use children's blood. Like it says fresh blood from a child has to be used for these certain rituals. And blood in general had to be used. The best that the book says the best is fresh blood from a child. It doesn't say you kill the child or anything. It just says get blood from a child. So I don't know how that
crazy,
but it could be animal blood, it could be your blood, someone else's blood, but the highest, the most purest blood was from a child. So that's how like why are these elites and pedophiles and all, why are they obsessed with like children? And it's a spiritual thing. It's a connect. And then the whole sexual thing, they believed that sexual intercourse was a spiritual form of connecting with the gods. And through orgasm, that was like an opening of the spirit world that you could connect into that. And children were the highest and purest form of that. Now, Crowley supposedly molested tons of children, molested men, women, animals, like all of this stuff. But that's all at Boleskine House that he bought on Loch Ness. And then you have these European rock and roll guys from Led Zeppelin buying his house, and they recorded albums there. And then you have the Beatles. The Beatles, like, highly regarded Crowley. And
John Lennon.
His picture is on the album cover of Sgt. Pepper's with all the people. Like, supposedly it was all the people that they liked and it had influence from. Crowley was on there. Ozzy Osbourne had a song called Mr. Crowley. So he's connected to music a lot as well. And the whole idea of Thelema and the Book of the Law, do what thou wilt, all of that stuff really started to catch in the West with the hippie movement. Which, guess what the two top themes were of that? Sex and drugs. And rock and roll. Yeah, and music.
And rock and roll.
Then you have guys like, who's Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary was like the prophet of that time, and he was pushing the whole sex, drugs, rock and roll thing. It's under this guise of like peace and love and all this stuff, but it was really a spiritual revival of Crowley's ideas. That spiritual enlightenment and all that stuff comes through drugs and sex.
Well, and here's what I found interesting, because when I was reading, the way that it was worded is, do what you want, do what thou wilt, right?
Yep.
And this is where I kind of get on my soapbox here.
Yeah.
But that concept of being obsessed with revealing your true self, knowing your true self. No, because to do what you want, you have to know what you want, right?
Yeah.
And that was part of Crowley's message, and that's part of what got picked up in the mainstream. Like, even if you're not doing all the rituals and stuff, but look at, you name some specific celebrities, but like on a broader scale, Satanism, New Age, there are other groups in that, but there's all these movements now, even progressive Christianity.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I associate them with New Age a lot. They're really New Age Christians is what they are.
Yeah.
But it's this idea of like, I have to know my true self and then be true to myself.
Yeah.
And it's totally anti-gospel.
Right.
Because it's my will instead of God's will.
Yeah. My desires.
Yeah. And knowing myself instead of knowing God. Right. I guess I won't go into it today, but have a lot of friends that like the Enneagram, and I could disappoint you guys right now and say that the Enneagram has New Age connections because it's about knowing your true self.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a personality test, but it's this idea, like the Bible says, to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And the Lord's Prayer is your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we have John the Baptist saying, not my will, but your will be done. And I'm sorry. John the Baptist said, I must decrease so he can increase. Jesus in the garden said, not my will, but your will be done. So the gospel message is, I don't have to know myself. I have to know God. And it's not my will.
Well, we should be conforming. We should be conforming to the image of the Son, not conforming to the image of what we already have inside of us.
Right.
The
Romans
Bible says,
12.
Crucify yourself. That person that you're trying to connect, just kill him. Like, he has nothing to do with this.
But that's why and that's what I was saying. I think at the beginning of this, I think I mentioned it. It's just the same message repackaged. It's like,
well, you can get. It's a missionary tactic to get religious people to trip them up and deceive them. And I'm not saying you can't. Be true to yourself. Like, there is an individual. There is an individual called Josh. He likes Star Wars. He likes to eat steak. I'm not saying like completely do away with everything that makes you you. No, like God made you you. He made you special. But the whole idea of like, what are my deep desires and what I'm just going to say yes to everything that comes across my mind and my heart, and the whole idea of like follow your heart. Oh, what's your heart? What's your heart telling you?
Which is the Disney. Yeah, I mean, look at every Disney princess. Exactly, follow
your heart.
It's all rebellion against authority figures. Your parents don't know what they're talking about.
Nobody understands me. I have to make my own choices in my own way. And follow my heart.
I was watching a video recently. Someone was pointing out, like, even Frozen 2, all these little girls look up to Elsa, and one of the lines in one of her songs is that you're the one you've been waiting for. You're the, and it's like, no, it's not. We know as Christians, it's not about us, right?
Right. You're your own God.
You're not enough, right?
Yeah.
Ryan is not enough for Ryan. Ryan needs Jesus.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But it just shows you that message is so subtle. And I'm not saying if you watch Disney, you're gonna
no.
It's gonna trick you. Like you're not sinning by watching a Disney movie or anything.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
But if you
the message
over years and years of exposure to that message, people start to believe it. That's the danger. Right. And even in Christianity, there's a difference in self-awareness. Like, there's a base level of self-awareness. Like, I've gone to work before. If I have a meeting first thing Monday morning, I've gone into meetings just furious about nothing. And it's like, I didn't have breakfast that morning, like I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm hungry and I need to keep myself in check.
Yeah.
Right?
See, I don't follow
off on somebody.
I don't follow my heart. I follow my gut.
Exactly.
My gut's hungry.
But like self-awareness, just meaning like, oh, I'm tired, so I'm cranky, or I'm sick, so I'm in a bad mood, or like, if Aiden, my son, he's growing up, he does something new for the first time, and I get excited, and I just have a great day, and I know it's because of something he did, so there's a level of self-awareness and what they call emotional intelligence, right? That's healthy. Sure. I know myself, I know what affects me, right, and I'm in control of myself. But that's more about self-discipline. It's not well, I feel like sleeping with that person tomorrow, so like I'm going to go, that's totally different.
Right.
I'm identify as a man or a woman or whatever. That's totally different from being emotionally intelligent and being in control of yourself. And then the Christian message on top of that, like that, you don't have to be a Christian to have self-control, but it is a fruit of the Spirit. And the Christian message is not my will.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And you can see the fruits of his labor. I mean, it's not just Crowley, but the fruits of the movement of do what you will.
Yeah.
Do your own thing. live your truth. What's true to you is your truth.
Yep.
There's no morality has been gone. We've been demoralized.
Yeah, there's no objective truth.
Have
no
you
objective
heard
morality.
Have you heard that guy Yuri Bezmenov?
No.
So he's an ex-KGB informant from Russia, and he did a talk. This is like the early 80s, like early 1980s, and he did this lecture, and he fled Russia because he started to notice, all this stuff with the KGB. Which KGB is like their form of CIA, kind of, and how they were brainwashing people in Soviet Russia. So he fled to Canada and then came to the United States, became a professor. And he did an interview on TV where he talked about the tactics of the KGB. And he said, the way you infiltrate a country within one generation, it takes one generation, 15 to 20 years. The way you infiltrate a country is you demoralize them first. In other words, you take the children in the institutions and all the schools, and you pump them full of like amorality, like, oh, well, question everything and question whether you're supposed to do this or do that. And you can see the fruits of that in the 1960s, right when the drug and sexual revolution of the hippie movement came out. Then you have the riots in Berkeley, and you have all these students like rioting and protesting, and it turned to like anarchy. And it's because they were being taught this stuff in the classes, like it's called critical theory. And that came from Germany, Nazi Germany, like criticize everything. And it was a tactic to overthrow American culture, and it's working. It is working. Like, Look where we are now. When you're demoralized as a nation or a country, then anything goes. Anything.
Yep.
And that's exactly what we see in our culture now. I can be a woman. I can give birth if I want. It's like, it's absurd, but it's.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, you should go look up the lecture. He's like, even if you show them with brute facts, like show them, here's what you're thinking is causing and it's wrong. Here's the opposite that's true. They won't believe it. They won't believe it until they have a boot on their neck, from
right. From the KGB.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it's like when they overthrow you and you're in a concentration camp and they have their boot on your neck, then you're like, oh, what I thought was wrong.
Yeah.
But dude, it's wild. And we see that now. It's in full swing.
Yeah. So just to sum up the reason we went on that little journey, and we'll talk about Aleister Crowley and Thelema, and
it gets deeper and deeper.
Like there's other things we want to discuss, and we just don't have time. So, but just to sum up, the reason we took that little journey today is because the Balenciaga thing, we really missed the wave. Like, we're a little late coming out with this information, but that was a month or so ago, and everybody's outraged about that, and so it was newsworthy and current, relevant for us to talk about. But as Christians, and not just as Christians, but like as people who are like, we like to kind of get into this kind of nitty gritty, kind of, behind the curtain stuff. And you see these trends and you see these dots connecting, and we say, well, look, there are other conspiracy podcasts that discuss similar things, but like as Christians, here's why we think it's important. And here's comparing the world's message to the gospel's message, and the devil's agenda and Christ's agenda. And
it's not just a conspiracy for conspiracy's sake. There's an agenda that's being worked out by the forces of darkness.
And that's my thing. Like, I'll say being a Christian makes considering conspiracies easier for me, because I find it easy to believe in a global enemy. We have an enemy that we're fighting.
Right. Well, and then it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because a person that doesn't have a Christian worldview looks at this stuff and like, wow, why are they doing that? Why would
they have to say who and why. Who is
they don't have an
behind
answer.
this?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Why
I
would they
believe
do
that there's a cosmic enemy that hates humans and is trying to wipe us out. And so it makes more sense to me. So, you don't realize some of these occult, some of these, dark magic, different things that have been going on throughout history and how they've kind of made their way into mainstream media, mainstream culture, and that some of the things, the things that you wouldn't even have been able to fathom 30 years ago, the reason we're seeing it now is because of these guys, because of people like Aleister Crowley and some of the, his circle. And so anyway, it'd be cool. We can, do episodes in the future that go deeper into his biography. I'd love to do episodes about how he influenced modern day Satanism, and because they just as kind of a teaser for that topic, a lot of them don't even think like Satan is a real person. He's a symbol.
They say that.
And so, but
I think I think some of them don't. But I think some
New
of them
Age, New Age, a lot of these groups, like, think about pantheism and panentheism, where like, the universe, energy, we're all one, all this stuff.
We're all God.
They try to take a god or an entity that has authority out of the picture, because they're worshiping themselves, so they can't worship something else, right? If the message is do what I want, there can't be something with authority over me, And so that's again, as Christians, why are we against that culture? Why don't we do what we want? Well, it's because we believe there's a higher power with his own will.
We're accountable,
and our job is to get in line with his will, right? And anyway,
I think that's where now I'm gonna throw a big bomb in the whole thing is where Alberino gets the theory of like transhumanism.
Yeah,
and we're gonna be offered, you can become a god now with this implant or with this merging of technology. You can have all knowledge. You can have the power of the internet in your mind.
Maybe the Antichrist or the beast is a cyborg, and he says, "Yeah, you can be like me if you."
Exactly.
Hey,
you can change your DNA to something that's not human.
It didn't kill me. You can be like us. That's a really interesting idea.
Post-humanism, bro. There's not going to be any more humans left.
Yeah,
it's going to change and alter our DNA. All these vaccines, changing our DNA, bro.
Yeah, well, we'll have to get into that deeper next time. I think we gotta put a pin in it for now. We've gone for a little over an hour and a half, I think.
Hour and a half, bro. Yeah, man.
But
Happy New Year.
Yeah, guys. Follow us on Instagram at behindthecurtainpc. You can message us if you have questions or comments. You can email us if you're old school. It's funny that email is old school now. But yeah, if you don't have Instagram, write us an email, behindthecurtainpc. behindthecurtainpc@gmail.com. That's true. We have a free Gmail account. We don't have our own domain.
We're paying for nothing.
Yeah, we're doing this all for free.
Ryan, are we going to hint drop something that's going to happen maybe next week?
The only hint I'm going to give is you were talking about the post-human, the agenda stuff. And I was going to say, if only we had a guest lined up that might be able to shed some light on this for us. It's not Timothy Alberino, but we might have a guest coming up on our next episode.
Dude,
so
I am working on Tim. So he's on Twitter. So I'm like hitting him on Twitter. I'm commenting on all his stuff. I'm like, hey, Tim, oh, that's a good point. Oh, yeah. You should check out this podcast.
Yeah. Wink, wink, wink.
I'm wearing him down, bro. He's going to give up. But
yeah, Lord willing, we do have a guest lined up for our next episode. And
we have an
amazing, kind of a big deal.
Amazing guest. I think Ryan and I both soiled our britches when she said yes, she would come on and do this podcast.
Yeah.
He, person of interest.
You already said she, so that's a clue. Can't take it back now.
What's gender these days?
We can't say any more than that, though. We don't want to count our chickens before they hatch.
Yep.
But it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be epic.
Yeah, guys. So share the podcast and keep up with us on Instagram.
Praise
and
the Lord.
We'll talk to y'all. Well, we'll talk to y'all. That's not how it works. Hopefully, you'll hear another episode soon.
You will hear us next time.
You'll hear from us. Yeah.
Don't buy anything from Balenciaga.
Yeah. Don't do whatever you want. Not our will. We got a good gospel message in there, man.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. I think that our guest next week is going to be good at that too. I can't.
And that's kind of so like what John Piper says: Christian hedonism. When our will conforms to His will, then we can do our will.
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
and we're really doing His will. Hallelujah. Yeah. All right, Ryan.
Hallelujah. Amen. All right.
I'm going to bed.
See you, Josh.